Hello. In this video, we're going to be looking at IELTS listening. And a question I get asked often, and it may be something that you find challenging too, is how to cope with MCQ, with multiple choice questions in the listening, in particular where they come in the later sections. So especially in the final section of the listening, they can be very challenging. So I want very quickly to go through my process for dealing with multiple choice questions. And I have a little example that we're going to look at together. And I hope that it helps you to improve your score on these types of question. So let me get the slides up and then we can start and have a look. So, I don't know if you know this expression, keep it simple, stupid, is usually, it's a marketing expression, KISS, and it basically means, you know, keep it simple. And I think that's the key in multiple choice. A lot of students make it far more complex than it is by trying to carry a lot of information in their head and also trying to look at too much and remember too much before the listening starts. And that only creates a lot of confusion. So the focus must be on what you hear. And then as you hear, you match. And that's the way to do it. Not to try and memorize things and then try and sort it out as you listen, but be more practical about the task. So let's think a little bit about multiple choice questions. There is a certain specific anatomy of them. The part of the question that isn't the choices is called the stem. And this is the bit you must concentrate on before you start to listen. There should be two choices that are similar, and one of these will be correct or one of these will be better. Basically, one of these is the answer, but the other one will be very close. And quite often you may be struggling between these two. The good news is that if you're struggling between the two, you're halfway there. There'll usually be an answer that is impossible or irrelevant or not really stated, but sometimes I notice in IELTS it can be stated in a different way, so can sometimes deliberately cause a bit of confusion. But generally you should be down to two answers, and if you're there, then you're 50% of the way there. And if you're looking at the question and you're not really sure, just mark those two answers and make a note so that when you do the transfer onto the listening sheet at the end of the exam, you can make a proper choice then. So don't miss one or two questions because you're still worrying about one you're not sure about. Just mark the two answers and deal with it later. So if you have two choices, you're halfway there. Okay, use logic. If you really didn't hear, think, well, from what I heard, which is the most logical choice of these two? And often you'll be right. Okay, don't carry too much information in your head. I said before, concentrate on the stem. If you carry too much information, you'll get confused. You won't be able to remember all of the stuff you're trying to remember. Listening for one phrase or one word is a lot easier than trying to listen for lots of things at once. Once you hear the word from the stem that you are looking for, listening for, then really concentrate on what comes after it. And I'll show you a little example in a minute. Then you look at the choices. So you'll have 3, maybe 4 choices, but often in the listening, it's only 3 choices, and listen at the same time. So as you listen to what they're saying, look at the choices, and with practice, you'll get used to identifying which one is the correct one. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to pick a keyword from the stem. So this is an example of a question it's from one of the Cambridge books. I can't remember which one exactly. Joanna concentrated on women performers because. So I've highlighted women performers because that's what we're being asked about. Okay, we need to know why. Because tells us we need to find out why she focused on women performers. So as I start to listen, all I'm interested in is why did she focus on women performers? And if I hear something about women and performing, then I'm going to start concentrating. So this is what we hear. You only had women performers in your study. And this is a supervisor. So now I hear that, I think, right, I need to really concentrate now to get the next bit of the listening. So we're listening for markers. So women performers, we've heard it. Now I'm looking at the choices and I'm listening carefully to what's said. So here are the choices. Women are more influenced by fashion. Women's dress has led to more controversy. And women's code of dress is less strict than men's. So I know one of these is what is going to be said about the reason for focusing on women performers. Okay, then the next part comes. Was that because male musicians are less worried about fashion? Okay, so this is the first thing I hear, and it looks like choice A. So if we just go back, was that because male musicians are less worried about fashion? Women are more influenced by fashion. Men are less worried. So it looks like A. However, the question asks about Joanna's reasons, and we know that that comment was made by the supervisor, not Joanna. So we need to keep listening. And then Joanna says, I think a lot of men are very much influenced by fashion. So A is wrong because she says men are influenced by fashion. But in social terms, the choices they have are more limited, i.e. more strict. They'd really upset audiences if they strayed away from the boundaries. So now we know that it isn't A, and it's got to be C. They don't have any choice in how they dress to perform. Therefore, the answer is C. And there are the choices again. Women's dress women's code of dress is less strict than men's because men don't have any choice. And therefore, C is the correct answer. B is not really mentioned at all. It says something about audiences not being happy if men don't wear what's expected, but it doesn't say anything about controversy around women's dress. So here, if we are not clear on whose opinion we're looking for, we would be getting the wrong answer. So it's very important to read the question carefully, the stem of the question, and then it's very important to listen and look at the choices at the same time as you read. So focus on getting the right bit with a key phrase, which in this case was women performers. And then check the choices as you listen. So you do have to multitask here. So it's a two-step process. Identify a keyword in the stem of the question, in this case, women performers. As soon as we heard women performers, then listen carefully. So once you hear the start of the information, listen carefully and look at the choices. Then just practice. So try this. You should find that it will be easier than trying to carry everything in your head, and it doesn't take as long. It also means that you can look at all the questions before the listening starts. And then as you practice it more and more, it will get easier and it will get faster. Okay. So I suggest you try this. It works very well. I've used this technique with lots of students, and it does help to take away that challenge that many people have with listening. If you go across to my website, IELTSlearningtips.com, you'll find an article that gives a little bit more information on this topic. And there are also other things there, other topics, and also some free resources, and a chance to join any of my courses as well. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you on the next video.